Do you want to make some really cool NPCs so that the next time your players go into a tavern, it's not just the barkeeper that you've been thinking about for a couple of days and the hooded individual with the quest hook? Well, in this case, we're going to use AI to make a whole tavern full of people that have some really interesting backstories themselves, people that you could really get some inspiration from, and maybe they'll become the party's new favorite little tag-along NPC. So what we're going to do is we're going to use ChatGPT with a formula that I've kind of provided, and you can find it down in the description if you'd rather just skip the video and go check it out. But if you wanted to, I'll kind of go over why we're doing each one of these things, and we can refine this together and see what kind of things it spits out. And all in all, I'll keep this video as short as I can. So let's go over the prompt. Now, you might notice I'm using the Plus version. You do not need to pay for this. It could be totally free, and 3.5 will do just as good of a job. In this case, here's the important pieces of this prompt. I consider an NPC to have the following information. You are defining the structure of the object that you want the object being an NPC. So I give it a list of races. This could be whatever works for your world. So I say a race selected from the following list. That's important because it will refine your chosen selection, right? Give them a name, which it's going to figure out, and it actually does a pretty good job. If you don't like the names that it comes up with, we can always ask for additional names, or you can go to like fantasynamegenerator.com. Just find something that you like. Gender, fair. A sexual preference, that might be important, might not be important. You can leave out whatever you want or add whatever you'd like. A personality. Now, this is such an obscure or vague request, but ChatGPT does a great job with this, and it actually uses all of the other little pieces that it comes up with to help develop the personality, and you'll see what I'm talking about shortly. A physical descriptor including skin color, height, and weight. Now, you can add whatever else you want here. You could say size of their nose if you really care to, but it will add things like that. And I found that skin color, height, and weight are kind of those things that you always tend to describe. So it might make some sense to have those in there. You could put age as well if you'd like. Alignment. Now, I've recently added this, and it's about as useful as it typically is in D&D, so if it's useful to you, then great. If it's not, then great. That's totally fine. Leave it out if you'd like. I list them all in a list. That way it knows what to choose from, and it better understands them because ChatGPT knows what these terms mean. An example of how they would speak to someone. This one is pretty important. Now, obviously, if you become inspired by the NPC that it creates, you might come up with your own voice or your own way of speaking, but this gives you a good little hint. So it's going to say things like, it'll be, oh, hey, welcome to my shop. Or it'll be like, what the hell are you doing here, right? And either one of those can really provide a little bit of structure for this NPC. I like this part of the prompt almost the best. What is their job? This is a cool one too, because nobody's just doing nothing, right? Even if they are, ChatGPT will occasionally throw something like that in. Oh, they're unemployed. But one of the more recent ones I did, it developed a locksmith who was secretly a rogue. And this was a cool way to have this. So it gives them more structure. What caused them to take that job? It can give a reason for why they went into that profession. Maybe they were poor and they just needed money, or maybe their parents were in this business and now they've inherited their shop. Everything that you could imagine. They're an adventurer and, because their parents were killed. It doesn't really matter, but this gives, again, more structure. Any skills or abilities that they have. Now, this one's cool too, because a lot of times it's going to have to do with their job, but not always. And it's going to give you some more things that maybe the group can use if they, roll well, if to persuade a locksmith, for example, to help them to pick a lock of somewhere. Maybe they have to pay them off, or maybe the person just wants the challenge. So it could really help with the role play. What secret may they be keeping? That one's kind of obvious why that's cool. A potential quest hook in a fantasy world based off Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I'm personally playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This could be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be D&D. You could put Cyberpunk there if you want, and it will still understand a lot of this stuff. But you also don't need to have this. It's just good to have quest hooks, and frankly, by generating so many of them, as you're probably going to use this quite a bit, you will come up with other quest hooks. This also goes back to, if you watched my previous video on the city building, if you were to generate this NPC in the same thread that you generated your city, it will use the context of that city to help you figure out your quest hooks. So if you didn't see that video, you should go check it out. I'll put a link up there. All right, what would they carry on themselves? This one's cool and kind of goes back to the old D&D versions where rogues would just steal everything. But it's important to know, do they carry some tools on them or do they carry some money on them? It's worth knowing in case your rogue decides to steal from them. Compare this NPC to a famous character from a movie or book. Now, this one is somewhat recently added by me to this prompt, and the reason for that is that not only do I want to take the inspiration from everything we just went over, but if ChatGPT is kind of comparing this to something that it knows from literature or from the movies, that can really help with, you know, kind of giving this person a voice or an attitude. One of the people that I did recently, it said, hey, this person's like Bilbo Baggins. And I'm like, well, that kind of paints a heck of a story. You know, Bilbo is a great character, and it really will help to flesh out your NPC. And that's everything. So we're just going to throw this right into ChatGPT and see what it spits out. Now that this is generated, you can see what it comes up with. And I actually took a minute to go make in Midjourney a version of this guy who's a red-scaled Dragonborn. So he's a Dragonborn. His name is Thavaan Flamescale, or Thavaan. Let's go Thavaan. He's a male. He's homosexual. Now, this is something that, you know, we don't have to spend time on this, but there is no weight at the moment with ChatGPT as far as choosing from a list, at least that I'm aware of. So if you know otherwise, please put down in the comments. So if you pick a sexual preference, it's going to pick whatever you want. Obviously, you could change things up, but in this case, he's homosexual. So he's outgoing, he's boisterous, and he's fiercely loyal. He has dark red scales. And now this part's cool, the physical descriptor, because this actually, with very little modification, could be what you read. You walk into a smith and you see a Dragonborn. He's tall. He's got red scales. They seem to shimmer by the light of the forge. He's standing 6'7", and he's weighing approximately 250 pounds. Blah blah blah. You guys get it. So he's got blue eyes. That tells you everything about what he can look like. And he's chaotic good, which is kind of fun for a blacksmith. He speaks with a deep, resonating voice. His words colored with the flair of a showman. So let's go ahead and try this.
Well met, stranger. Thavaan Flamescale here at your service. What brings you to my humble abode this afternoon?
Or whatever. You know, you can kind of do whatever you want. So he's a town blacksmith, and after a life of wandering and adventuring, he chose to settle down, choosing a profession of a blacksmith as it reminded him of the fires of his dragon heritage. He also found peace in the rhythm of hammer on metal, crafting items to use and for beauty, which is pretty awesome. Like, that gives you every reason that he needs. If, you know, like, hey, why'd you become a blacksmith? Well, you know, I used to be an adventurer, and, you know, one day I was fighting a dragon, and this kind of reminded me of my history, and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can kind of make stuff up on the fly from there. His skills and abilities, apart from his blacksmithing skills, he's a skilled warrior specifically trained in using the hammer and the axe. So maybe he could teach your players a little something. Maybe they spend a little time with him, they become a little bit more proficient in something. Let's see. His secret is that he accidentally set a royal castle on fire while trying to save it from a siege. He has never admitted this to anyone. Obviously, you're not going to just get that by like questioning the guy, but that is an interesting thing, especially if this guy ends up tagging along. Maybe at some point you work with him, he makes you some armor, and it's so good that he's like, you know, I really love an audience with the king someday. And as soon as he walks into the castle, he starts getting a little nervous. Like, this could give a backstory to this guy, but I also just think that's hilarious. He set a castle on fire. So for a quest hook, now this makes sense, but everybody's going to have similar kind of quest hooks, and there really are only so many categories, so it makes sense. In this case, he has a legendary hammer that he used for smithing that was part of his family. It's been stolen, and you need to go retrieve it. So maybe this guy comes with you to go help you retrieve it. He's already a past adventurer, so he's got skills. You know, if you think about what his hit points are going to be based off of, you can maybe pick a warrior or some sort of a fighter and give him, you know, a hefty amount of hit points. As far as what he carries on him, he's got his blacksmith tools, he's got pieces of metal for impromptu works, his trusty hammer that he would carry around for combat. Makes sense, he's a past adventurer, he could, you know, never know what's going to come up from the past, and he wouldn't want to be completely unarmed. And a small, intricately carven wooden dragon, a keepsake from his adventuring days. Why does he have that? I don't know, think about it. Now, character comparison. This one, I think it was okay, but it does kind of give something to go off of. I probably wouldn't use this one specifically for this character, but the fact that it gives you something at all is good. And it compares him to Gimli from The Lord of the Rings. Now, just because I didn't know, I was like, you know what did Gimli do after The Lord of the Rings? It turns out he ended up going to some cave where he was a lord there, and he, you know, people mined things, and they were prosperous, but he never had a wife, he never had kids, but he didn't become a blacksmith or anything like that, which I thought would have been really cool if that was why they compared him. But it still gives you something to think about, and as far as the voice goes, maybe you could kind of throw a little Gimli in there. Anyway, so this is a quick NPC. I'm going to do one more, but now is a perfectly fine time to stop the video if you'd like to. I think you can totally see what I'm going for here, and go grab from the description the prompt and go try it out for yourself. But let's go ahead and do one more. But I'm going to give it a little bit of extra flair here. I'm going to tell it that I want specific choices. All right, I'm just going to type this out, and then I'll show you guys. All right, so this is a little bit of a weird one. I just kind of came up with it. So I said, can you generate another NPC? Now, here's where I get specific. I say I want it to be a tiefling with no history of adventuring, because I want this to be the opposite of what we just created. They should have a quest that my players can go on that involves helping them save face because of some mistake that they made recently that was embarrassing. I don't know. It just makes some sense. So let's see what it comes up with. Up next is Azriel Nightsong. Now, again, I use Midjourney to create a little thing up here, and it's easy enough to use like a token creator to turn these into tokens if you're using a VTT as well. But so Azriel is a female tiefling. She's bisexual. She is reserved, articulate, and highly intelligent. And if you kind of read through some of this, basically she is a scholar who was working at a school, kind of more in the shadows. She wasn't drawing a whole lot of attention to herself, but as she learned more, she became more confident. However, this led her to create and predict a prophecy that did not come true. And so that's what she needs the adventurers to help her do, is to actually go into this crypt that is rumored to have a tome that has predictions of things in the future, and she wants to go with you.
Greetings, I am Azriel Nightsong. I need your help. I made a prediction about an ancient beast known as the Shadow Leviathan waking and bringing perpetual night to the worlds. However, Alicia Brightmind proved my prophecy wrong. I need your help now to save my reputation.
So she, being a tiefling, knows a few cantrips, and she can do a little bit of magic. She's also extremely smart, so maybe she can help you out with some of the puzzles down in the crypt. And you know, when you look at how she speaks, there's a very almost refined but thoughtful way to speaking here. She's carrying a few arcane items on her, but basically you can look through this whole thing and come up with a whole plan. Like, this gives me an idea that I can go make a whole dungeon out of. Like, we're talking a whole session out of this one NPC very easily too. So this could be a person that you just run into walking, like literally bump into somebody carrying some books. And they also mentioned that you should base this maybe off Hermione Granger, which makes a lot of sense too. A little bit reserved, but very smart, and gets more confident as she gains in knowledge. So this whole idea is just super easy. If you copy the description down below, you'll start creating NPCs that you can really enjoy. And if you do use Midjourney, I'll even tell you the prompt I used for this. It was fairly easy, and I'll put it down in the chat, the description as well. Fantasy character art concept, Dungeons and Dragons style tiefling, female, reserved, articulate, highly intelligent, deep violet skin. Her horns curve back over her head. Her eyes glow with vibrant green. Scholar, sage. That's all I put. And it gave me a few different options, all of which were fine. And it was very easy to create this NPC and throw it in. You know, within an hour, I could create 5, 6, 7 of these NPCs and have them ready for my session, as well as with art. If I want to just have it on paper, I can print this off and I can have character sheets if I really wanted to. It'd be very easy to turn these NPCs into things that you could use in your own game. So I'm going to end the video here. I want you to consider using ChatGPT, especially if it's something that you feel a little bit less ready to use. Maybe you have reservations just thinking that AI can't possibly compete with your own brain, and that's true. Honestly, you can be way more creative than a computer can. It's one of our skills, right? But there's no reason that you can't use it as a crutch or as a way to help yourself to become more creative. And, you know, sometimes you just need NPCs. I can straight up tell this thing, can you generate me 5 NPCs? And it will spit out 5 of them. Once you start getting up like 10, 20 or so, it takes a little while to generate, but it'll still do it. So consider using ChatGPT. I've got some more of these videos kind of in the queue, so look for them coming out over the next few weeks. And I hope that you're enjoying these. Let me know in the comments if there's something that you think I could be doing better, if these are taking too long, if you want me to go more in depth about anything, about why I chose these options, or what type of videos you'd like to see me create. All right, thank you for joining me here on Dungeons and Drams. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.